Howdy folks, Saber4 here. Back with the ultimate part of this in the nice little series here leading into our Secrets of Power. We're going to talk today about winning your pre-release. There's a series of videos that I've done which goes through some of the leader ranks and goes through card ranks, including both the legendaries and rares and the commons and uncommons. So there's a lot more information than is just what is in this video. This in particular is going to talk about going through how we evaluate what are we doing to build a deck and how do we go about winning a pre-release. I've done a couple of these videos in the past, one for each of the sets with the last two, so Jump to Lightspeed and Legends of the Force. In these videos, what we look at is the rules of a pre-release, the difference between sealed and draft play, kind of how limited works. We'll talk about what's in a pack. We'll talk about how we choose a leader, going about building a deck, give a little testing pearls, some major combos that you don't want to miss, just some things that are out there when you are playing, easy things to find. We'll talk about being lucky. And then I'm going to recap the leader rankings because I've changed them a bit with some of the testing that I've done in the last week. All of this is coming with, about a week to go before we get our first events, and then a little while beyond that with the release of this set. So if you've not done so already, please subscribe to the channel, hit like on that video, and let's dive on in. All right, what's different about standard play versus limited? In standard play, we are limited to 3 copies of a card per deck, unless the card specifically says otherwise. The card pool is the full rotation. Disclosure, you might have to see a deck list depending on what kind of tournament you're in and what's going on. The leader selection is the full set of leaders, and everything that you've seen so far, minus the suspended leaders, which there are only a couple of. And then the deck size for standard play is 50 cards minimum, with a couple of cards out there that modify that size. Sealed and draft, the two limited types of play, are slightly different. In both of these, you are going to be able to use unlimited copies of any specific card that you draw. You draw 5 of a specific common, and it wedges well into your deck. You go right on ahead and play it. The card pool. In our pre-release events, in our just sealed play, that is 6 provided packs. In draft, that is 3 provided packs, but those are going to be shared around. There is no disclosure required in sealed draft. You're not going to disclose specifically your drafted cards. However, you are drafting in a group, and so everybody who touches that pack will see that pack. Everybody who touched that pack before you will have seen what's in it. Everybody that touches that pack after you will see what's left in it. Leader selections. In sealed, you're going to get, in this one, you're going to get 8 different leaders. They might not be different. That just depends on what your pool is. In draft, you get to pull from the 3 drafted leaders. And then deck sizes are 30 cards apiece in both versions of limited play. So, what's in your packs? We know what's in a kit. A kit is going to include the 2 spotlight leaders, and then it's going to include 6 packs of cards. Packs and rarity breakdown, these things are well known. A pack is going to include 1 leader and 1 base. It is going to include 9 commons, 3 uncommons, 1 rare slot, and 1 foil, with the note that that foil slot and the third of the uncommon spots. The foil spot can be any rarity. The uncommon spot, if it is a hyperspace, can be any rarity from uncommon and above. Your average card pool then in a pre-release is going to come down to 5 to 8 leaders, somewhere between 52 and 54 commons, 16 to 20 uncommons, 5 to 7 rares, possibly 1 legendary, 6 foil cards that can be kind of anything. What's different for Secrets of Power versus the others? In this case, it is the leaders again. Just as it was in the previous set, in Legends of the Force, we had 2 leaders that were side-specific without a second aspect. In this one, we have 1 leader who replaces a villainy cunning spot, and that is the double aspect yellow DJ. So we do have one leader that is not going to grant you access to villainy or heroism, but is going to be double yellow. We'll talk about him on down the line. The first thing you want to know when you go into one of these drafts is you want to understand what your common leaders are. I've opened whole boxes of cards and not gotten a specific rare leader. Sometimes a couple of specific rare leaders out of 24 packs. And so the idea that you're going to get multiple rare leaders out of 6 packs is kind of small. You're most likely going to be playing with a common and selecting from common leaders. Sometimes you're going to open more than one of these, as far as like more than one of an individual leader, which is why I say that your leader selection might be limited. But it is very important to understand how these leaders operate, especially the common ones. And I've got those for you here. They are Jabba, Leia, Colonel Yularen, Mon Mothma, Deidre, Luthen Rail, Sly Moore, and C-3PO. Note that each of these, all these have their own abilities. If you want full details of them, please go to the leader version of this particular series. I'm going to link that one in the end. But note that a few of these, Deidre, Jabba, Sly Moore, and Leia, all have a action or all have a cost to their action, as does C-3PO. Mon Mothma has a static ability, and then Colonel Yularen has an active ability that allows me to attack with 2 consecutive units, provided that I have that on the board with different costs. And then Luthen has a static ability as well that leans on friendly units being defeated while attacking. These are your common leaders. Be familiar with them, understand how they operate. They are the most likely thing that you're going to see, aside from the set leaders, as far as your builds go. All right. We've sat down, we've cracked open our pre-release kit, we've pulled everything out of there, we start opening our packs. The first thing that we're going to do as we are getting everything set up is we need to get our cards sorted. It's important here to follow a process. Just go ahead and understand how you're going to lay things out. I would not do it initially by like cost or anything like that. My first pass is I'm opening packs. I don't even care what's in them. I am sorting them by color and alignment, trying to just see what pools are there. Because if something has just 3 cards in it, the chance that I'm going to play that particular pool of cards is very low. My second pass, now I'm looking at the cards. Now I'm sorting my pools, and I'm sorting them by cost. So I want to understand how many first turn, second turn, third turn, or beyond plays I have in a specific color and alignment. Or in a specific color with alignment and unbound. Evaluate those play pools. What gives me the deepest set of things to play with? Which sets have enough early plays to be able to put things out there? In a regular game with a 50-card deck, you want to play with about 11 to 13 first turn plays. It's more important here in Sealed to not miss a first turn play. And so out of a 30-card pool, to keep that same 22 to 26%, you're looking at 4% per. You need about 7 cards that are first turn plays to be able to run that same math. Once you start getting up in 8, maybe 9, you're going to be pretty automatic. You're going to be able to do a lot of things, especially with these leaders that have a cost. Again, we will talk about that a little bit more later on. Step 3, align your choices. You can choose any base. So you want to figure out of your deep enough card pools to run, what do you have that serves a leader the best? So taking a look at the leaders and seeing what complementary pools you have, what kind of synergies you have, and then let that free unit, let that thing with the leader finalize those choices. Building a deck. Commons are going to be the core of your deck. I talked about this in another video. Again, take a look. You're going to have roughly 3 times the commons that you do uncommons, roughly 9 times as many commons as you have rares. These are absolutely the staple units of your deck. You're most likely in commons because of the way that rarity works in Star Wars Unlimited to get some very vanilla cards, such as here the Imperial Dark Trooper. But that does not mean that they're always vanilla cards. There are a lot of things that where the numbers matter. That Imperial Dark Trooper, we've been waiting for something to be a just 3/3 first turn play in villainy for a long time. That's not the only best play here. Chandril and Sponsor, fantastic first turn play. Imperial Occupier, fantastic first turn play. They managed to bounce him off the field, kill him. Okay, great. Leaves behind a spy token. This Bravo Squadron Fighter, 3 health on this is quite powerful. Being able to run as a Saboteur. There are a couple of good plays in blue there's a very good play in blue early on for a ship that is a Sentinel. Sentinel 4 health, kind of tough to get around. But here we have a Saboteur able to go and bypass that. The Rebellious Functionary. Not only is this an official and a rebel, this is also a hidden 2/2 for 1. So not able to be attacked, able to, especially if you grab initiative, able to go ahead and attack in without a whole lot of recourse, and some important traits. So this is another of those things that with Mon Mothma, for example, you don't have to be in red in order to be able to play it. Numbers matter. There are plenty of plays that have impact well beyond those. Uncommons. Here is where you're probably going to find the cards that synergize with the leaders that you have the best in order to make the best setup. They carry slightly more complexity. They're a lot more likely to have text and synergies and keywords than what you see on your commons. If I'm choosing between a leader with similar pools, as far as the depth of turn 1s, turn 2, turn 3 plays that they've got, look very carefully to see if your uncommon cards have good synergy, to see if they're a strong fit, to see if there's a specific reason that you want to be playing blue-red hero versus, playing blue-red villain. See if there's a card in here that makes more sense on one side or the other. These are going to be the primary power cards of your deck. They are going to be the ones that do the heavy lifting in most cases, although they are usually going to be one-ofs, just because of the rarity of them. You're much more likely to run 20-something commons than you are to run 7 uncommons. Just the math of how the numbers come out. Let's be fair. You'll probably run 7 uncommons. You probably won't run 10. If you do, great. That means that your pool was pretty concentrated in a couple of colors and wasn't so bad off against your alignment that you're able to do something with it. And you got a really lucky pull. But I put down here some examples of some pretty strong ones. Senator Chichuri being able to grant other officials restore 2 or grant another official restore 2, has a pretty big delta when she's able to swing. 2/5 with a restore 1 is functionally a 3/5 based on what it's able to swing, and then is able to give another 2 to give back health to your base. Jar Jar, because of plot, able to bump your leader because that's a ready unit that's coming in. Otherwise, he's able to just be a 2/1 unit that comes out as a buff, which is not terrible. Sent to Kaz, very powerful for the 6 flip leaders. Able to go ahead and attack with that leader immediately and leave behind a 5/5 unit as well if she comes in off of plot. And to action compress that leader turn can be very, very powerful for something like Cassian to be able to keep initiative. We have the Soulless one, which is one of the disclosed cards that I put here specifically for that. Because if you can ready 2 resources, then my goodness, 3/3 is not a wonderful stat line on a ship, but being able to get 2 extra resources back, very powerful play. Rares. Rare cards create hard choices. When we see rare cards in this, sometimes there are things that are worth playing out of aspect. I included the eye here because that is one that is very, very worth playing out of aspect at times. If your opponent has a big board, you know, slap this down for, you don't have, if you don't have anything to finish out the last three, or you need them to slow down their board, slap this thing out there and make them pay for each unit they want already. Chancellor Palpatine, plot him out for 5, protect your leader, uh, put 2 Sentinels out there, 2 Sentinel spy tokens that you don't care about. Yeah, he's a 2/2 for 3, but man, he comes with friends. And then fully armed and operational, I put out here because, again, your base is going to get attacked. Being able to give something ambush in here and being able to do it from plot as well can be pretty powerful. Don't trap yourself with rares. Just because there's a rare card there and because it does something good doesn't mean that it necessarily has to be in your deck. There are places where the combo is good enough and you definitely want to do something with it, but don't trap yourself with rares if your pool does not support it. The wild cards here. The set cards being available, especially as foil spots in these packs, is something that has really changed over the last 3 sets. In some of the other sets, they weren't nearly as interesting of cards to play. In this one, they are, because there's a couple of good leaders that they line up with and a couple of places that they are very, very powerful. 2/5 for 3 is a good size if we're talking about Ahsoka being able to disclose something that's probably going to be in your hand and attack with another unit. Yeah, on 3, I put this down, I attack with my other thing. Next turn, I attack with Ahsoka. I disclose a card. I go ahead and I basically, without getting the +1, I Rebel Assault. She is a fantastic tempo play. Captain Typho is probably even better because if that Sentinel is attacked, not only is it a 4/5 Sentinel, I can disclose to heal my base. Usually at the level where he's coming out, he's going to absorb 2 attacks. He's going to be able to give 2 health back to your base as long as you have the things to disclose. Again, a very, very powerful play. These are all cards that should cause you to consider their color. Cad Bane, 4/5 unit that defeats something with 2 or less remaining HP. Again, leaving behind a very powerful unit. It works very well with the Chancellor Palpatine. Just a good, strong play again. Anakin, really only in Padme, but with Padme, this is a 3/4 hidden for 3. That stat line on 3 is just fine. If you have Padme, that's a 5/4 when he's on attack. So a very, very powerful play with Anakin. And then last I put here, I am the Senate, because my goodness, creating 5 spy tokens, that can get ugly. That is a lot of action churning, and that's a lot of action churning with that. If your opponents don't go deal with spy tokens, action churn for 10 damage. Few testing pearls here. I've run several attempts now that we have all the packs. I've run a lot of simulation, run a lot of draft simulations, mostly sealed simulations so far. But a couple of things stood out even since I made the previous videos. Sly Moore has moved up in my rankings. Her on attack ability is incredibly powerful, being able to deal 2 damage to something that's exhausted. This can just straight take out spy tokens if they came in this turn, or if you have something on the board that's already attacked in and damaged, Sly Moore just, you dirtle until your leader flip. A lot of things have attacked. She attacks something else, does 2 damage to, polish off a unit. This is a very powerful ability. And because of the way that these games set up, it is quite likely that you'll be able to pump out a few spy tokens with her. So this is she went way up in my rankings after some further playtesting. Leia, if you choose to use her, keeping 2 cards that are off aspect. If your build pool, if you can manage to trim down to 28 usable cards and 2 cards that are absolutely out of aspect for you, 2 is plenty. You can usually mulligan for 1 and just hold one of them. 3 feels like a lot. 4 is too many. If you have 4, invariably you're going to wind up with 2 of them in your hand at some point. And yes, that can be nice if you are still early enough to just auto resource one of them. But if it happens to you late in the game, you can wind up just kind of stuck with a card that you don't have value in. And that is game breaking. Deidre's ability, card advantage in limited play is gigantic. Versus unit damage, you know, I draw a card or I get Daring Raid, and I do it without burning a card from my hand, and I do it for 1 cost. Yeah, if I can put enough slightly below cost units in her deck, this is a fantastic ability to work with. Note the next line there. In order to pay for and support the leaders that have a cost, your build has to be a little heavier on the lower end of your curve. Those leaders don't become as useful if you find yourself playing a 2-on-2, a 3-on-3, a 4-on-4, and all the way up. That means you're never going to trigger your leader ability. And a big part of this, as far as the leaders go, is not just the free unit, but the ability to do something while you are waiting on having enough resources to deploy it. The last thing here is that limited play, especially sealed, has very few control options. So if you're going in thinking you're going to be a control player, I'm going to tell you that is probably not going to work. The sealed version is not going to do it. At draft, you might get past enough things, but the cost to get started with that is pretty high. And in a lot of cases in this one, some of the earlier cards that you can use for control require that unit to have attacked and damaged your base already, which is suboptimal because there's not a ton of things out there that are very healing. Power combos. Don't miss these. If you get one of these set up and you have this kind of stuff fall to you in your sealed pool, I would strongly consider using that particular option because they're amazing. Number 1, Obi-Wan Kenobi. If you open this legendary, play yellow. I don't care what else you do, not DJ, but play yellow. He's great by himself. A 4/5 for 4, that stat line is just fine. Obi plus Sabe, holy cow. You choose their top card, then you discard it, then you get to play it. They went down 2 cards. You will push them to exhaustion very quickly. Dryden Voss, especially in combo with Deidre. Put this with aggressive negotiation, and you are adding cards to you're adding cards, getting things in, getting yourself to a spot where you can then double the attack that you added to with aggressive negotiation. Otherwise, he is not nearly as strong by himself as Obi, but with any kind of combination that can pump him up or any kind of thing that will be a permanent buff to him, experience tokens, attachments, other things, quite nice. The final one here is Chancellor Palpatine, especially Chancellor Palpatine with trade route taxation, with plot. That's 4 new units at once. If you do this and you choose to play the Palpatine deck, you might combo these with Unveiled Might. You get 2 Sentinels up and ready, or you get 2 Sentinels out that are token units you don't care about, and you have an 8/11 ready unit that is your leader. Very difficult to stop. Granted, he is a 7, so getting to that means that you have to navigate the game to that point, but that is very possible depending on how you're doing things. The last couple of points here. Number 1, one of the things about pre-release that you really want to do, if you can manage it, is to be lucky. I was incredibly unlucky in one of these. I opened a pool that really only lended itself to Ray Red. My best turn 2 play is the Clone Deserter. An out of aspect 1 cost was my best turn 2 play. And that was just what the card pool had. So sometimes, you're there, and that's just what happens. That one I happened to lose in the finals, and I lost to the finals for someone who had Gar Saxon and a Dark Saber. Not pretty. Jump to Lightspeed. I was working and working and working a Poe deck right to the last minute, Poe green red. And at the last minute, I decided to flip to Boba. I decided to flip to Boba because the 3 cards that were on the screen were all in my deck, or were all in the build pool. And I decided to go ahead and go with TIE Bomber. And in the final, that was my first hand. And so I was able to put out a TIE Bomber that my opponent couldn't deal with. I put a twin laser turret on it. Now it's a 4-6, or now it's a 2-6. They especially can't deal with it because it's going to just shoot things down. They finally put a couple of space units out, thought they were going to be able to attack into it, hotshot maneuver, deal 3 damage to those things, clean those ships out of the way, deal 3 indirect at the end. It was an absolute mess for them. In the last set, one of my seal pools included both Watto and Churret. You talk about an interesting play. I had not intended to play blue, and just didn't really think that I had the cards to support it until I opened the last pack, and that was 2 of the cards in the pack, which is incredibly rare. But oh my, yeah, that swapped things in a hurry. Watto didn't feel like a great play to most people because it's only a 1 attack on the second turn play. But because of the way that sealed works, churning through your deck is a very, very, very powerful thing to be able to do. Gaining an experience token, or draw a card, and then Churret. Churret was a nightmare to deal with. I've revised my leader rankings, and I want to go through these one more time. Top tier here: Cassian, Deidre, Mon Mothma, Sly These are all very easy to build. They've all got strong leader abilities. Several rounds of testing have moved Sly up. My second tier: Leia, Luthen, Jabba, Sabe, Palpatine, and Satine. These are a little bit more build dependent. They're still very easy to run. The leader abilities are all very simple to trigger. Sabe moved up in this tier, and Price dropped back. The third tier: Price, Yularen, Padme, and Dryden Voss. These are a little bit more difficult to set up or to trigger, especially in a limited pool. And then avoid. C-3PO and DJ, not worth playing. Bail Organa, really not worth playing. Lama Su, there's just not enough upgrade in here. These are weak and or slow abilities, and the trade-off is just not worth the cost. And notice that I have marked the different common leaders in here. So it's all about evaluating your pool, understanding what's there, building something from the ground up that has enough of your turn 1 plays to be able to come out of the gate swinging, and then, sequencing your cards and turns well. So check out the other videos in this series to look a little bit at card ranks and talk a little bit more of the math behind it. But get out there, enjoy your pre-release, and we will see you next time.